Did you know that Jesus was born in a place literally called House of Bread? Bethlehem. In Hebrew, it means exactly that. And here's what's fascinating. In John chapter 6, verse 35, Jesus says, "I am the bread of life." Not in some random place, but in the region of the House of Bread. Now look deeper. Ruth chapter 2, verse 3, Ruth gleans grain in the fields of Bethlehem, the same fields. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 13, David gets anointed king while shepherding flocks there. And all through Scripture, bread keeps showing up. Manna in the wilderness, the showbread in the temple, the Last Supper, every thread pointing back to this one location. It's like God embedded the entire story into the geography itself. The bread of life. Born in the house of bread, where grain was harvested, where kings were chosen. You miss details like this when you only hear Scripture taught, but when you read it yourself, when you slow down and notice the connections, that's when the layers start revealing themselves. So read it for yourself, because sometimes the most profound truths are hidden in the simplest details. Did you know that Aaron's staff didn't just sprout leaves? It produced ripe almonds overnight. Most people miss this detail in Numbers 17, verse 8. Aaron's staff, and they had budded and blossomed and produced ripe almonds, a dead piece of wood, suddenly bearing fruit. But here's what's fascinating. God specifically chose almonds. In Hebrew, the word for almond is shecht, which means to watch or be wakeful. Now jump to Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 11 and 12. "What do you see, Jeremiah?" "I see an almond branch." Then the Lord said, "You have seen correctly, for I am watching to see that my word is fulfilled." The same Hebrew word, shecht. This wasn't just about proving Aaron's authority, it was about God's watchfulness, his constant attention to his promises. A dead staff producing almonds overnight was God saying, "I'm always watching, always working, even when things look dead." Man-made religion produces nothing. Divine appointment? It bears fruit, even from what seems impossible. The Hebrew language reveals layers most translations miss, so read it for yourself, dig deeper, because sometimes the smallest details carry the most powerful truths. Did you know God chose the most unlikely creatures to keep his prophet alive? 1 Kings chapter 17, verses 4 through 6. "You shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there." The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening. Ravens. Of all the birds God could have chosen. But here's what makes this strange. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 15 calls ravens unclean. These birds eat dead things, carrion, and rotting flesh, yet God specifically commands them to feed his holy prophet. Why would God use something he declared unclean? Look closer at Scripture and you'll see a pattern. Rahab the prostitute saves God's spies. Tax collectors become Jesus' disciples. A Samaritan woman at the well becomes an evangelist. Again and again, God chooses the unlikely, the unclean, the overlooked. The ravens weren't a mistake. They were a message. God's sovereignty extends beyond his own laws. He can make even the unclean serve his purposes. So when you feel disqualified, remember the ravens. God specializes in using what the world calls worthless. Read it for yourself. The details matter. Did you know that Nicodemus didn't just happen to visit Jesus at night? Most people think he came after dark to avoid being seen, but there's something much deeper happening here. Look at John chapter 3, verse 2. "This man came to Jesus by night and said to him, 'Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from God.'" Night, darkness. Now watch how John uses this theme throughout his gospel. "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." John 1:5. "And this is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and people love the darkness rather than the light." John 3:19. Nicodemus wasn't just visiting at night. He was coming from the darkness. And here's what most miss. Jesus tells him he must be born anothen. In Greek, that word means both again and from above. It's a play on words we lose in English. Born again, born from above. Follow Nicodemus through John 7 and 19. Watch him move from darkness into light. Read it yourself. See how his story unfolds. Sometimes the time of day changes everything. Did you know Isaac's name reveals a prophetic pattern hidden in plain sight? When Sarah first heard she'd have a child at 90, she laughed in doubt. Genesis 18, verse 12. But when Isaac was born, she said, "God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me." Genesis 21, verse 6. From doubt to joy. But here's what most miss. This wasn't just about one family. Isaac's name literally means laughter. His very existence was God's promise that sorrow becomes joy. Look at Psalm 126, verse 2. "Then our mouth was filled with laughter when the Lord restored the fortunes of his people." And Jesus himself said in Luke 6, verse 21, "Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh." Isaac wasn't just Abraham's son. He was a living prophecy, a picture of God's pattern throughout history, turning mourning into dancing, weeping into laughter. The gospel message, wrapped up in a name. These connections don't jump out when you just listen to sermons. They surface when you read scripture yourself, when you slow down and notice the details, because sometimes the most profound truths are hidden in something as simple as a name.